On May 29th, 1453, the troops of the Muslim leader Mehmed II conquered the great city of Constantinople, New Rome. For more than 1,100 years, Greek Orthodox Christians had assumed that the Greek Orthodox Christian Roman Empire would stand until the second coming of Christ. They had always called their city the God-protected city, and indeed, until now, it had been protected by heaven. But when the Roman Emperor, Constantine XI, fell in battle, New Rome became the capital of a new empire, the Ottoman Empire, ruled by a pagan people, enemies of Christ and Christianity, the Muslims. It was a dark, dark time for Orthodox Christians. In their violent hatred of Christianity, the Muslim Turks embarked on a course of persecution designed to effectively enslave the flock of Christ. Their strategy was no less cruel than that of atheist communists in the Soviet Union. To the Turks, the Romans were infidels, and they had absolutely no rights of citizenship. They even had to wear distinctive dress. They could not marry Muslims, nor could they engage in missionary work of any kind. In fact, it was a crime punishable by death to convert a Muslim to the Christian faith. There were many rewards given to those Christians who would convert to the Muslim religion. Often, these enticements worked, and many Orthodox Christians gave up the struggle and betrayed their true faith in Christ. The majority of the sultans were sick, demon-ridden men whose irrational rule and unbridled power only heightened the already demoralizing effect of Turkish rule on the Church. The aim of orthodoxy in the Ottoman Empire became simply one of survival. Little could they know in 1453 that the heavy sword of Islam would weigh upon them not for a generation or two, but for 5 long centuries of darkness. When Mehmed had entered the city, he was heard stating, "Now, at this joyful moment of time, we have the riches of the Romans. We have won their empire, and their religion is completely extinguished." But Mehmed greatly underestimated the omnipotence of Jesus Christ and the faith in him of the Orthodox Christian Romans. He was proven very wrong through the courageous confession of the new martyrs of the Turkish yoke.
The great many new martyrs of the Turkish yoke who gave testimony of Christ and sealed their words with their blood and their lives came from every social class. Many of them were educated, affluent, possessed enviable positions in society, and were occupied in lucrative careers. One of them is the new martyr Angel, the physician, the doctor. He was born in Argos, Greece, in the late 18th century. We do not know details about his childhood or youthful years. Apparently, he came from a poor but pious family, where he was nurtured with the spiritual teachings, traditions, and ethics of the Orthodox Christian faith. He studied medicine and became a doctor. For unknown reasons, he immigrated to Asia Minor and settled in Ephesus, where he applied himself in the medical profession. He distinguished himself for his deep faith in God. his devotion to the Orthodox Church. He loved its deeply beautiful services, its holy days, and especially his fellow man. He was merciful to all, and to the poor he offered his medical services and advice free of charge. Most of the money he earned from his lucrative profession he distributed to the needy, to widows, and to the orphans. He did not fail to speak to everyone about Christ, his Holy Mother, and the Church. He shared everything with everyone, daily professing the unique and saving truths of the Orthodox Christian faith. He lived, as is known, at a time when atheism and polemics against the Church were on the rise due to the so-called European Enlightenment, whose perverse and subversive teachings were spreading everywhere. One day he met an aggressive French atheist who had arrived in Ephesus to promote the principles of the atheistic so-called Enlightenment. He heard him speaking at a public venue, mocking the Christian faith. St. Angel was so agitated that he took to the floor of the stage to refute the Frenchman's arguments. He spoke in defense of the faith, not so much for the reprobate one, but for those being led into the darkness of atheism. Like St. Nicholas of old, who once smacked the blasphemous Argos, St. Angel reached his limit hearing the blasphemous attacks of this Frenchman directed towards St. Angel's greatest love, Christ God, his Holy Mother, and the Church. Indeed, such was the insult that he felt compelled to call upon the insolent atheist to a duel with him. Let us not forget that at that time, personal insults were resolved by dueling to the death. St. Angel even suggested that he, the Frenchman, be fully armed and that St. Angel would fight only with a stick, confident that the power of his faith would keep him safe and would give him victory. The atheists accepted, and they went to the embassy where they signed a special agreement and defined the manner, the place, and the time of the duel. St. Angel then rushed to his spiritual father, to whom he confessed awe and asked for a blessing to fulfill his wish to defeat the wicked Frenchman. His spiritual father expressed his opposition to the duel at first and tried to dissuade him, but seeing his determination born of his seal, he gave him permission to proceed with his burning desire to defend the faith even to the death. Then he returned home and lay awake all night, praying and beseeching God to vanquish and punish the blasphemous Frenchman. The next day, having communed of the life-giving mysteries, he appeared to the Frenchman, declaring to him that he was ready for the duel. When they arrived at the place of the duel, the atheist was seized with a sudden cowardice. An overwhelming fear and terror came over him, and quickly he left in shame, despite the disapproval of all those that were present. St. Angel was not satisfied with the outcome. The fact that the blasphemous atheist had run away saddened and depressed him. He shut himself up and confined himself to his house, receiving no one. The devil then introduced strange thoughts into his mind that since he defeated the atheist with the power of his great faith, he was supposedly now possessed by a great selfishness. Why defend the faith against one Frenchman when he and his people daily suffered the daily blasphemy from the mouths of the Muslims? Was his zeal selfish or for God? The devil suggested that he indeed imagined that he had to become a Muslim and then convert back to Christianity and suffer martyrdom. It was obvious that he had been deceived by the devil, who was leading him to his destruction by convincing him to become a Muslim, which for most meant no longer able to convert back to the true faith. But he imagined, not me, I am stronger than most. 2 of his friends visited him at this time and brought him food. They tried in vain to comfort him and to dissuade him from melancholy, which his pride and obstinacy had produced. But he had made up his mind. On Lazarus Saturday in the year 1813, he went to the Turkish authorities and asked to become a Muslim. The Turks thought he was not serious, and therefore they abused him and drove him away with curses and beatings. But when they saw his persistence, they accepted him and circumcised him. But immediately he began to act weird, doing and saying strange things, performing senseless actions, so much so that the Muslims began to doubt his conscious conviction to Islamization, and they led him to the Turkish magistrate. They did not pay attention to his words because they considered him crazy, and expelled him far from the region, sending him to the island of Chios. There St. Angel continued his absurd conduct. Being dressed as a Turk, he wandered about in various places, and wherever he met a church, he entered with great reverence and made endless penances, and with sobs he beat his head on the floor so that one could hear the thud from far away. He would embrace with great reverence and tears the holy icons and the holy cross. He signed himself with the sign of the cross frequently. He participated in the holy services, praying with devoutness and fervor, so that he caused the faithful to sympathize greatly for him. He begged all of them to pray for him, to carry out to the end his struggle. He gave alms to the poor and asked the priest to pray for him. When he found some people admiring and praising him for his struggle, he scolded and lashed out at them, as Christ once did to Peter when he replied, "Get behind me, Satan." Coming out of the churches, he went to the Agora, where he challenged the Turks and taunted them to arrest him for disrespecting Islam. During Ramadan, one day he sat outside a Turkish house and drank water and smoked. Seeing him, the Turkish landlord came down and beat him. Then he went before the Turkish court and sat on the steps and ate ostentatiously and drank wine, which is forbidden and severely punished by Islamic Sharia law. But no one paid any attention to him, for they thought him insane. At some point, he understood the devil's trap, that he was deceived into apostasy, and for this he bitterly repented. He considered his Islamization a great mistake and a betrayal of Christ. He often went to the tomb of Saint Makarios Notaras, who had led many new martyrs to confession and martyrdom. With tears and sobs, he begged him to grant him the spiritual strength to suffer the martyrdom he so desired. Sometimes he would go to a chapel to pray and receive blessings from pious priests. There in church, he entered into a rare spiritual experience, which he did not reveal to anyone, but continued pretending to be a fool for Christ's sake. Then he took the great decision that would lead him to martyrdom and to the washing away of his great sin of apostasy. After 6 months of preparation and with a crushing heart, he felt he was ready to fulfill his aim and suffer martyrdom. He shaved off his beard, which was in itself a clear sign of apostasy from the Muslim faith, for it was strictly forbidden for a man to shave off his beard. Seeing him, the Turks wondered and asked him for explanation about his new appearance. He, with courage and boldness, answered that he had become again a Christian, and therefore cut off the superfluous beard which defined him as a Muslim. They tried to coax him, convincing him to return to his senses, to wisen up. They promised him much treasure and goods, and also tried flattery. But seeing that he was unconvinced, they proceeded to threats and warnings and finally violence. They began to torture him mercilessly all night long without cessation. The martyr endured all the tortures with great perseverance, praising God for the honor God had done him to suffer the torment for God's glory. The next day, he was led to the governor of the island. Before many authorities and officials, he was given one last chance to ask to change his mind, promising him again money, honors, and titles. But he refused all of it and confessed his faith in Christ. They thought they would talk to him and talk him out of it by forcing him into a mosque with brutal beatings, swearing, and threats. St. Angel resisted and shouted with all his strength, "It is better to kill me right now than to take me to the mosque, because I am not a Muslim, but a Christian." The furious Turks finally threw him into a dark dungeon and set his feet on the tubruki, a horrible torture device designed to crush the feet, and subjected him to one of the most horrible of all torments. The next day, the decision was issued, death by decapitation. They led him to the location called Vunaki, where they beheaded him on December the 3rd in the year 1813. The holy relic of the martyr was left in the place of execution, guarded for 3 days. The Christians of the area tried to take pieces of his clothes or soil watered by his blood, even offering money to the Turkish guards. A rich Christian offered a considerable amount of money to the Turks to take the holy relics, but they did not accept any offer. A pious clergyman approached and begged for the sacred head of the martyr. This led the Turks to take the martyr's relics, even the bloody soil, and throw it all into the sea. At night, some courageous devout Christians tried to haul it up, but they could not succeed. His memory is celebrated December the 3rd. Saint Angel, Martyr of Christ, pray unto God for us.
Χορός αγγελικός, αγγελίνε ο μάρτης, και δήμας αθλητών επεκρότησαν άνω την συνυπέρ της πίστεως καρτερίαν και ενστασίν, και το πνεύμα σου μετεφροσύνης λαβώντες ανεβίβασαν εις ουρανούς μεταδόξης Χριστό το